On paper, Julie Masino won. Months after Cracker Barrel's branding disaster wiped out close to $100 million in market value in a single week, shareholders voted to keep her as CEO. The board backed her. Proxy advisors backed her. The vote passed. That was supposed to end the story. It didn't. A year after one restaurant logo triggered a presidential social media post and a stock rout, Julie Masino was gone anyway, pushed out by something no shareholder vote could stop. She later said it felt like being fired by America, but the logo never killed her career. It was only the moment the public finally noticed a company that had been quietly failing for years. Cracker Barrel built its identity on being frozen in time. Rocking chairs on the porch, a country store bolted onto the dining room, a menu built around nostalgia, a chain engineered to feel like it hadn't changed in decades. That formula was aging right along with its customers. Most of Cracker Barrel's regulars were nearing retirement age, and the chain barely registered with anyone younger. Guest traffic had already been sliding for years before anyone outside the company noticed. Into that slide walked Julie Masino, a Taco Bell and Sprinkles Cupcakes executive hired in 2023, specifically because she had spent her career modernizing brands, not preserving them. The board wasn't hiring a caretaker. It was betting that change was safer than staying the same. And no one yet knew what that bet would cost. In May 2024, Masino unveiled her answer, a 3-year, roughly $700 million transformation plan. Refresh the brand, simplify the menu, remodel the stores, grow digital and off-premise sales, improve the employee experience. It was ambitious, well-funded, and, on the surface, exactly what a struggling legacy chain needed. This wasn't incremental tinkering. It was a full repositioning of a 50-year-old brand for a customer base that had stopped showing up. The company had commissioned research, what it called voice of the guest, and the feedback was blunt. Stores felt dark, outdated, hard to navigate. Masino later admitted the company had missed the mark. The plan promised to fix that. For a while, it looked like Cracker Barrel finally had a strategy equal to its problem. But the fragility here didn't start with Masino, and it didn't start with a logo. Cracker Barrel's traffic had already fallen before the pandemic. Down in 2017, down again in 2018. By 2023, before a single new sign went up, quarterly guest traffic was still dropping by more than 3% in one quarter alone. This wasn't a marketing problem the company could design its way out of quickly. It was structural, a chain whose entire value proposition was nostalgia, trying to attract customers who had never felt nostalgic about it in the first place. And the mismatch went deeper than demographics. When the new logo rolled out, only a few dozen of the company's 660 stores had been remodeled. The substance tested in a handful of locations. The symbol rolled out everywhere at once. Modernizing the look of a brand built on feeling old was never going to be simple. And that symbol was the one thing every regular customer had memorized without thinking about it. On August 19, 2025, Cracker Barrel unveiled its new logo. Gone was Uncle Herschel, the old-timer, leaning against a barrel that had anchored the brand for decades. Gone was the hand-drawn script. In its place, a flat, minimal wordmark designed, the company said, to read better on highway signage and phone screens. Within hours, the backlash was immediate. Generic, soulless, corporate, commentators and political figures, including Donald Trump Jr., framed the redesign as evidence of a company abandoning its identity. Then President Trump posted publicly, calling on Cracker Barrel to bring the old logo back. The stock dropped more than 7% in days, nearly $100 million in market value gone before the company had said a word in its own defense. On August 26th, less than a week after launch, Cracker Barrel reversed course entirely, restoring the old branding and pausing its store remodel program, along with its diversity and pride-related commitments. Here's what the headlines missed. The logo went back within a week. The controversy, by most measures, was over by Labor Day. If the story really was about a bad rebrand, the damage should have stopped there too. It didn't. Traffic kept falling, down roughly 8% in the months after the reversal. Then came the earnings. In the quarter ending that October, revenue fell nearly 6%. Same-store restaurant sales dropped almost 5%, and retail sales fell more than 8%. Cracker Barrel posted its first quarterly net loss in recent company history. By the following quarter, same-store sales were down more than 7% again. Over the following year, the stock fell more than 50%, erasing close to $600 million. 6 times the damage of that first headline-grabbing week. The damage didn't stay in the boardroom either. As losses mounted, Cracker Barrel began cutting positions at its own corporate headquarters, not because of a bad logo, but because the business underneath it could no longer support the payroll it had built for better years. People with nothing to do with a font choice were losing their jobs over a decline that started long before any of them were hired. The logo was reversible in a week. The traffic decline wasn't. That gap is the real story. A company that fixed its symbol and discovered the symbol was never the problem. Waiting for exactly this moment was Sardar Biglari, an activist investor who had fought Cracker Barrel's board 7 times over 15 years. With the stock down and confidence shaken, Biglari filed a new proxy fight, calling the transformation plan ill-conceived and poorly executed, and arguing that only a CEO with real restaurant turnaround experience could fix what modernization hadn't. Shareholders voted, and Messino survived. Proxy advisory firms, ISS and Glass Lewis, both recommended keeping her, pointing to the progress made before the logo crisis. The board held. One director, Gilbert Davila, was rejected outright by shareholders and resigned, but Messino kept her job. For a moment, it looked like the story was over. She had weathered the culture war, the earnings collapse, and an activist assault, all in the same year, and survived every one of them. She hadn't. On July 27, 2026, Cracker Barrel announced Julie Messino was stepping down as CEO. The vote that saved her job hadn't saved her tenure. Her replacement wasn't another brand modernization hire. It was David Deno, a veteran of Yum! Brands and the former CEO of Bloomin' Brands, the company behind Outback Steakhouse, an operator, not a rebrander. She would stay on only through October in an advisory role, a formality, not a reprieve. That choice says more than the resignation itself. The board that fought to keep Messino after a logo crisis ultimately replaced her with someone whose entire resume is restaurant turnarounds, not branding. It was the clearest signal yet that the real failure was never the artwork. It was execution, years of eroding traffic that no new sign and no shareholder vote could reverse. Messino later described the year simply, "I feel like I've been fired by America." The truer version is quieter. She wasn't fired by a logo. She was undone by a decline that started long before she ever redrew one. Cracker Barrel's visible collapse was a font and a flourish, gone within a week. Its real collapse was a decade of eroding relevance that a $700 million plan couldn't outrun, and a rebrand only made visible. The board didn't just lose a logo fight. It spent 3 years discovering that the crisis was never on the sign. It was in the traffic count all along. You've watched Triumphs and Troubles. Subscribe to the channel for true business stories, and comment, which company should we cover next?